The gate camera pinged at exactly 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday evening that would change everything. I was in the home theater with Emma, watching Encanto for what had to be the 300th time, when my phone lit up with the security feed. A beat-up Toyota Camry, the kind with a cracked windshield and a prayer holding the bumper on, was idling at the entrance to my estate, my $50 million estate, the one with the infinity pool that cost more than most people's houses, the one with a helipad and 240 acres of Texas hill country, stretching out like a kingdom I'd built from absolutely nothing. 3 people sat inside that dying car, and I recognized the slope of those shoulders before the driver's door even opened. Vivian, my former mother-in-law. The woman who'd called me gold-digging trash. So many times it stopped sounding like an insult and started sounding like a bad song stuck on repeat. Then Derek stumbled out of the passenger side, unshaven, belly spilling over a belt that had seen better days, eyes red like he'd been crying or drinking or both. My former brother-in-law, the man who'd laughed while security escorted me out of my own home 5 years ago with $43 in my wallet and my 4-year-old daughter crying in my arms. And finally, Elena. God, Elena looked like someone had turned the brightness down on her entire existence. No makeup, hair in a messy bun. The woman who once graced society pages now looked hunted, desperate, small, my ex-wife, the one who'd sat silent while her family destroyed me. They stood at my gate like ghosts from a life I'd buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself it never happened. Almost. I told Maria to keep Emma upstairs and walk to the front door alone, my bare feet padding across marble floors that probably cost more per square foot than their monthly rent. The Texas evening air hit me. Cool, clean cicadas, screaming in the live oaks like they were cheering for what was about to happen. I opened the door just as they reached my porch, and here's the thing that made my heart sing in that cold, dark way that 5 years of calculated revenge had taught me to love. They had absolutely no idea that the man they were about to beg for help was the same ghost who'd been systematically dismantling their entire world for half a decade. No idea that every algorithm that failed them, every supplier who vanished, every customer who fled their sinking ship, all of it traced back to me. No idea that the company they'd stolen from me, I owned it now, all of it, and they were standing at my door like beggars, about to ask the executioner for mercy. But before I tell you what happened when I opened that door and looked into their desperate, broken faces, before I tell you what I said that made Vivian's knees buckle, and Derek dropped to the ground like a puppet with cut strings, you need to understand how we got here. So hit that subscribe button right now, because this story, this 5-year masterclass in patient, calculated, absolutely devastating revenge, is going to show you exactly what happens when you kick the wrong person out into the cold. Let me tell you how it all began. The conference room smelled like lemon polish and old money. I'm talking about that specific scent that only exists in places where generations of wealth have settled into the woodwork like dust, where the mahogany table gleams under a chandelier that costs more than most people make in a year, where the leather chairs sigh like they're tired of holding up men who've never worked a day in their lives. That chandelier had watched me sign my wedding papers 10 years earlier, young, stupid, in love with a girl who smiled like summer and a family who needed someone desperate enough to save them. Now it was watching me sign my execution. Vivian Harrington sat at the head of the table where her father used to sit before the cancer took him. She wore pearls, always the goddamn pearls, that caught the afternoon light like tiny knives aimed at my throat. 72 years old and sharp as broken glass, with a smile that could cut you and make you thank her for the bleeding. To her right, Derek lounged like he owned the world, legs crossed, $1,000 loafers tapping air, spinning a Mont Blanc pen between his fingers the way he used to spin lies at family dinners. 38 years old and still living off Daddy's name, still pretending the MBA from a school his family bought a building for actually meant something. Elena sat beside her mother, my wife, the woman I'd carried over the threshold of this very house on a rainy October night, laughing because we'd both gotten soaked and she said it was good luck. The woman who'd woken me up at 3 a.m. to tell me she was pregnant, crying happy tears into my chest. She wouldn't look at me. Her eyes stayed locked on the table's wood grain, like if she stared hard enough, she could disappear into it. Lips pressed so thin they'd vanished entirely, hands folded in her lap, knuckles white. The lawyer, some gray man with a gray voice and a gray soul, slid the documents across the polished surface. "Sign here, Mr. Carter. Page 12, 16, and 23. It's quite generous, all things considered." Generous. I looked down at the papers that would strip me of every share of stock I'd earned, every position I'd held, every dollar of severance I was owed, every shred of dignity I'd built in 5 brutal years of 16-hour days and sleeping on the office couch so I could keep the company from drowning in its own incompetence. Generous. "You built this company back up," I said quietly, looking at Vivian. "Is that the story you're going with?" She smiled, that cat with a bird smile I'd learned to recognize too late. "We appreciate your contributions, dear, but recent irregularities have come to light." She tapped a manila folder, thick, official-looking, the kind of folder that ends careers and ruins lives. Derek leaned forward, smirking. "Bank transfers to offshore accounts, emails authorizing suspicious payments, your signature on documents moving company funds to, well, let's call them creative destinations. I never signed those. The forensic accountants disagree." Vivian's voice dripped sympathy like poison from a honeycomb. "We could involve the authorities, press charges, have you arrested in front of your daughter." There it was, the knife. Emma was upstairs in the nursery, napping on her belly with one chubby arm thrown over her stuffed giraffe. 4 years old, all trust and giggles and believing that Daddy could fix anything. I felt it then, the exact moment my heart turned to stone. See, I'd spent 5 years pulling this family's failing retail empire back from the grave. Their precious Harrington retail group was bleeding money when I married in. $50 million in annual revenue and sinking fast, stuck in 1995 while the world moved online, hemorrhaging customers to Amazon and every other company that understood the future. I'd built them an e-commerce platform from scratch, wrote the algorithms that predicted what customers wanted before they knew themselves, optimized their supply chain until we could deliver faster than competitors twice our size, turned their dusty brick-and-mortar nostalgia trip into a $400 million digital empire, 80-hour weeks, sleeping on the couch in my own home because Vivian's bedroom was on the 2nd floor, and she said my late-night work calls disturbed her beauty sleep, missing Emma's first steps because I was in Shanghai negotiating with suppliers, skipping meals, skipping sleep, skipping my own life to save theirs. And they'd been planning this the whole time. I could see it now, the late-night meetings I wasn't invited to, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, Elena's growing distance that I'd blamed on postpartum depression, but was actually just guilt, eating her alive from the inside. They'd forged everything, faked signatures, created a paper trail that would send me to prison while they kept the empire I'd built. "How long?" I asked Elena. She flinched but didn't look up. "How long have you been planning to destroy me?" Derek laughed. Actually laughed. "Destroy you? Jesus, Carter, you really think you're that important? You're an employee, a well-compensated employee we're now terminating with cause. Sign the papers and walk away, or we call the FBI. Your choice." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, I really must advise—" I picked up the pen, not because I believed their lies, not because I was broken or beaten or scared, but because I finally saw the trap clearly, every escape route sealed, every door locked. Emma upstairs, innocent and sleeping, about to become a weapon they'd use to bleed me dry in court battles I couldn't afford. I signed my name on page 12, page 16, page 23. Each signature felt like cutting out a piece of my own flesh, but my hand stayed steady. Derek leaned back, satisfied. "There's a good boy." I stood. The leather chair rolled backward with a soft thud that sounded like a door closing on my old life. Vivian waved her manicured hand, dismissing me like a servant. "Security will escort you out. You have 20 minutes to pack your personal belongings. Don't touch anything that isn't yours." I walked out of that conference room without looking back, but I memorized their faces, every smile, every smirk, every second of their victory. Upstairs, Emma was still sleeping, her little chest rising and falling, completely unaware that the only parent who'd actually loved her was about to become a ghost. I packed 2 suitcases, one for her, one for me. Left the designer clothes Elena had picked out. The watch Vivian had sneered was too ostentatious for hired help. The framed photos of all of us pretending to be a happy family took only what mattered. I lifted Emma gently. She stirred, wrapped her arms around my neck, mumbled, "Daddy," into my shoulder. "We're going on an adventure, baby girl," I whispered. I walked down those stairs for the last time, through the marble foyer, past the sitting room where Vivian had told me I'd never be one of us, past the dining room where Derek had joked that I should probably sit at the kids' table. The front door opened. November air hit my face cold and clean. As I walked down the driveway with my daughter in my arms and $43 in my wallet, Derek called from the front steps, voice dripping with glee. "Don't come crawling back when you're living under a bridge, freeloader." I didn't answer, didn't turn around, just kept walking toward the gates that were closing behind me with the same finality as a coffin lid. But if they'd looked closer, if they'd ever once looked at me like a human being instead of a threat to their bloodline, they would have seen it. The tiniest curve at the corner of my mouth. They thought they'd won, but there was something they didn't know. Something I'd kept hidden for 5 years, buried under exhaustion and gratitude and the constant grind of proving myself worthy of love that was never real. I wasn't just the grunt who'd saved their company. I was the architect who'd built my own, and they'd just set me free to finish it. The first month was hell-wrapped in bleach fumes and broken dreams. We lived in a studio apartment above a laundromat on the east side, the kind of place where the windows don't quite close, where cockroaches treat the baseboards like a highway system, where the smell of industrial detergent seeps into your clothes, your hair, your skin, until you can't remember what clean actually smells like. Sirens every night, the kind that make you stop mid-sentence and count seconds, trying to figure out if they're getting closer or farther away. Emma cried for her old bedroom, the one with the hand-painted unicorn mural in the canopy bed that cost more than 3 months of rent in our new place. She'd wake up at 2 a.m. calling for Grandma, and I'd have to hold her while she sobbed, knowing that Grandma was probably sleeping on 1,000-thread count sheets without a single thought for the granddaughter she'd helped orphan. I stared at cracked ceilings at 3 a.m., replaying every insult on an endless loop. "You were never one of us. He's just a stray we fed too long. You think love makes you family? Money makes family. Real men don't cry about being fired." I got a job bartending at a dive bar called Rusty's, 4 nights a week, $12 an hour plus tips from people who could barely afford to drink. Came home smelling like spilled beer and disappointment. Emma would be asleep on the pull-out couch, thumb in her mouth, stuffed giraffe clutched like a life raft. "Days," I coded. While Emma napped on a blanket in the corner, surrounded by coloring books and broken crayons from the dollar store, I sat at a folding card table with a laptop held together by duct tape and spite. And this is where the story gets interesting. See, here's what the Harringtons never knew. While I was pulling 80-hour weeks building their e-commerce empire, I was pulling another 40 for myself. Every single algorithm I wrote to optimize their supply chain, I kept a cleaner, faster, better version, stored on private servers I'd set up years ago, hidden behind layers of encryption that would take the NSA weeks to crack. Every predictive model that tripled their online conversion rates, I had the next generation prototype already running, already learning, already improving itself, while they were celebrating quarterly earnings they thought were magic. Every connection I'd made with suppliers in Shanghai, manufacturers in Vietnam, logistics wizards in Singapore, warehouse operators in Mumbai, I had their private contact information, not company emails, personal WeChat accounts, cell phone numbers, the kind of relationships you can't buy, only build through late-night video calls and learning to say thank you in Mandarin and actually giving a damn about their families. They thought they were firing the help. They'd actually just freed the architect of their own destruction. But here's the thing about revenge that amateurs don't understand. Instant gratification is for people who want to feel better for 5 minutes. Patient devastation is for people who want to win forever. I didn't want to punch Derek in his smug face, though God knows I'd fantasized about it during every single family dinner where he'd joked about me being the hired muscle with a college degree. I didn't want to scream at Vivian or make Elena cry. I wanted something so much bigger, so much more permanent, so much more complete that when they finally realized what had happened, it would be too late to stop the avalanche. I wanted them to feel safe first. I wanted them to believe they'd gotten away clean. I wanted them to relax into their victory, pop champagne, congratulate themselves on removing the threat. And then, months, years down the line, I wanted them to wake up one morning and realize the ground beneath them had been eroding the entire time. So I let them. 6 weeks after they threw me out, I registered a new company, Apex Dynamics. Filed the paperwork in Delaware through 3 different shell LLCs, each one owned by the next, each one registered to addresses that didn't exist, with officers who were technically legal but practically ghosts. The paper trail led nowhere near my name. Not yet. I seeded the accounts with the $43,000 I'd managed to save before the divorce, money I'd hidden in an account Vivian's forensic accountants never found because it predated the marriage, held at a credit union in a town where Elena had never been. I built the platform in the dead hours between midnight and dawn. Emma would be sleeping 6 feet away, little snores that sounded like hiccups, blankie pulled up to her chin. I'd work in silence except for the click of keys, the hum of the laptop fan, the occasional siren outside reminding me what failure looked like. The code I wrote was beautiful, better than anything I'd given the Harringtons, because this time I wasn't working under their constraints, their legacy systems, their refusal to invest in anything that didn't show returns in 90 days. This was clean, pure, optimized from the ground up. I took everything I'd learned building their empire and made it better, faster, smarter, machine learning algorithms that predicted consumer behavior 3 steps ahead instead of 1. Dynamic pricing that adjusted in real time based on competitor movement, inventory levels, even weather patterns that might affect shipping. A recommendation engine so sophisticated it knew what you wanted before you opened the app. Supply chain optimization that could reroute shipments mid-transit based on demand spikes and natural disasters and political instability in regions most companies didn't even monitor. It was everything Harrington Retail Group could have been if Vivian hadn't been allergic to innovation and Derek hadn't thought disruption was something that only happened to other people's companies. Mornings after bartending, I'd sleep for 4 hours, wake up when Emma needed breakfast, make scrambled eggs on a hot plate while she watched cartoons on a phone with a cracked screen. Then I'd work while she played. She'd build towers with blocks. I'd build the foundation of an empire. She'd color princesses. I'd code revenge. She'd take naps. I'd take meetings over Zoom with potential clients, wearing a dress shirt on top and sweatpants below, the camera carefully angled to hide the peeling wallpaper and the laundry hanging to dry in the background. "Daddy working?" she'd ask sometimes, peeking over my shoulder. "Yeah, baby. Daddy's building something special." "Can I help?" "You are helping, just by being here." And she was. Every time I wanted to quit, every time the exhaustion made my eyes blur, every time the despair felt like drowning, I'd look at her playing with dollar store toys like they were treasures, happy because she had me and I had her, and that was enough. I'd remember Derek's laugh when they threw us out, Vivian's contempt, Elena's silence, and I'd code faster. 3 months after losing everything, Apex Dynamics went live. Invitation only, beta testing with 5 carefully selected clients, companies I'd researched for months, businesses that Harrington had been courting, prospects that were hungry for innovation and willing to take a chance on an unknown platform if the demo was good enough. The demo was perfect. Within 4 months, those 5 clients saw their revenue triple. Word spread in whispers through industry circles, the way the best secrets always do. People started asking questions. Who built this? Where did they come from? How is it so much better than everything else? And I stayed anonymous. Let the mystery build. Let the legend grow. While Emma colored on her blanket and I poured drinks for drunks who tipped in crumpled singles, Apex Dynamics began to grow like a seed planted in scorched earth, small and quiet and absolutely inevitable. The Harringtons had no idea. They were too busy celebrating their victory, enjoying their stolen empire, assuming the man they'd destroyed was exactly where Derek said he'd be, living under a bridge. But I wasn't under a bridge. I was building one. And when the time came, they'd be the ones standing underneath when I burned it down. Harrington Retail Group started bleeding the day I left, but they didn't notice the wound at first. It started small, innocent looking. The kind of technical glitches that happen to any e-commerce platform, right? Nothing to panic about. Week 1, the checkout flow developed a bug that randomly logged users out halfway through payment processing. Cart abandonment spiked by 34%. Their CTO, some Harvard kid Derek hired because they went to the same yacht club, spent 3 days insisting it was a server timeout issue that would resolve itself. It didn't. Week 3, the recommendation engine went completely haywire. Started suggesting dog food to cat owners, recommended winter coats to customers in Florida, showed maternity clothes to men shopping for power tools. The algorithm I'd spent 18 months perfecting suddenly had the intelligence of a lobotomized goldfish. Derek tweeted from the corporate account, "Experiencing minor tech hiccups. Our team is on it. Nothing we can't handle." Innovation. I screenshot that tweet, printed it out, taped it to the wall above my folding card table where I could see it every morning. Nothing we can't handle. By month 5, their customer service lines were jammed with complaints. Social media filled with angry posts. Their Yelp rating dropped from 4.2 stars to 2.8. People who'd been loyal customers for years were asking what the hell happened to the company that used to work flawlessly. What happened was simple. I'd left. See, I wasn't just the guy who built their systems. I was the guy who maintained them, updated them, babysat them through every single potential failure point. I'd written code so elegant it practically ran itself. But even elegant code needs someone who understands its DNA. They had the Harvard kid and a team of contractors who thought debugging meant Googling error messages. Then came Black Friday, the Super Bowl of retail, the day that can make or break your entire fiscal year, the day I used to spend 72 hours straight in the office, monitoring every server, every transaction, every millisecond of load time. I was bartending at Rusty's when it happened, pouring bourbon for a regular who tipped in quarters when my phone, the cracked screen one Emma had decorated with princess stickers, lit up with a news alert. Harrington Retail Group website crashes during Black Friday peak hours. I smiled. Actually smiled while pouring that drink. The site went down at 11:47 a.m. Eastern Time and stayed down for 6 glorious hours. 6 hours of the busiest shopping day of the year. 6 hours of customers rage-clicking refresh buttons while their competitors scooped up millions in sales. Their stock dropped 11% in a single day. By market close, they'd lost $68 million in valuation. Emma was at the bar with me that night. Couldn't afford a babysitter. coloring in a booth in the back while I worked. She held up a picture she'd drawn, our apartment building with a rainbow over it. "That's beautiful, baby girl." "I made it pretty 'cause our house is ugly," she said matter-of-factly. My heart cracked a little. But when I checked my phone during my break, Harrington stock was down another 4% in after-hours trading, and my heart patched itself right back up. Small victory number 1 came in month 7. Lux Threads, a mid-sized fashion retailer Harrington had been courting for 2 years, signed with Apex Dynamics. I remember the CEO's email like it was yesterday. "We've been watching your beta results. Whatever you're doing, it's revolutionary. When can we start?" I implemented them on a Tuesday. By Friday, their conversion rates had jumped 47%. By the end of month 1, their online revenue had doubled. By month 4, it had tripled. They told everyone who'd listen about the miracle platform that saved their business. Invitations to Apex's beta waiting list went from 50 companies to 500 overnight. I sat on the floor of our studio apartment, Emma asleep on the pull-out couch, her stuffed giraffe tucked under her chin, and watched the numbers climb on my laptop screen. Revenue projections, client pipeline, growth trajectories that looked like hockey sticks pointed at the moon. Meanwhile, Harrington stock continued its slow, beautiful bleed, down 42% over 8 months. Vivian went on a Mediterranean cruise to de-stress, posted Instagram photos of herself on the deck of some yacht, pearls gleaming, caption reading, "Sometimes you just need to breathe and trust the process." The comments were vicious. Maybe breathe some competence into your failing company. Trust the process of bankruptcy. Those pearls gonna pay the shareholders you're screwing? Derek tried to spin it all as market volatility and temporary setbacks and strategic repositioning. Wall Street analysts weren't buying it. One wrote in a report I saved, "Harrington Retail Group's technical infrastructure has deteriorated to pre-2015 standards. Without significant investment or leadership change, we rate them as a sell." Elena showed up in tabloid photos around month 9, charity galas, restaurant openings, always on the arm of some Qatari prince whose father owned half of Doha. She wore dresses that cost more than our yearly rent, smiled for cameras like her family's company wasn't circling the drain. I saw those photos on my phone while Emma and I were at the laundromat. She was in the dryer watching chair, the molded plastic one with the cracked seat, eating animal crackers from a $1 store bag. Elena was drinking champagne that probably cost $500 a glass. Emma asked for juice. I gave her water because juice wasn't in the budget that week, and I kept building. Apex Dynamics grew quietly, carefully, like a predator stalking prey that doesn't know it's being hunted. I took on clients one at a time, making sure each implementation was flawless before moving to the next, building a reputation not through marketing or PR, but through results so undeniable they spoke for themselves. By the end of year 1, Apex had 23 clients. Every single one of them had doubled their online revenue within 6 months. Every single one of them told their competitors. Every single one of them had previously considered signing with Harrington, but found them technically inadequate, or strategically unfocused, or my personal favorite, not serious about innovation. I still bartended 4 nights a week because the revenue wasn't steady yet. Still lived in the apartment that smelled like bleach. Still drove a 2003 Honda Civic with a check engine light that had been on so long I'd stopped noticing it. But late at night, after Emma was asleep, I'd pull up Harrington's stock chart and watch the red line fall like a bird with broken wings. Derek's Twitter got quieter. Vivian's Instagram went from daily posts to weekly to monthly. Elena's print stopped appearing in photos around month 11. And I thought about Derek's voice calling after me as I walked away with everything I owned in 2 suitcases. "Don't come crawling back when you're living under a bridge, freeloader." I wasn't under a bridge, but they were about to be. Apex Dynamics grew like cancer in year 2. Not the kind that kills you fast and loud, the kind that spreads silent and relentless, metastasizing through every organ, every system, every corner of the body until one day you wake up and realize it's everywhere and it's too late to stop it. I started hiring in January, not just anyone, not random engineers off LinkedIn with impressive resumes and mediocre skills. I hired ghosts. Small victory number 2 was bringing back every person Harrington had destroyed. First call went to Thomas Chen, the warehouse operations manager Vivian had fired during one of her efficiency purges. She'd called him incompetent in front of the entire logistics team, said he lacked the strategic vision necessary for modern retail, which was corporate speak for, "You disagreed with me and I have the power to ruin your life." Thomas had a wife, 3 kids, a mortgage. He'd sent me a LinkedIn message after I left. "I'm sorry about what happened to you. You deserved better." I called him at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. "Thomas, Marcus Carter, remember me?" Silence. Then, "Jesus, Marcus, how are you, man? I saw what they did. I'm building something better. And I need someone who actually understands logistics, not someone who thinks warehouse optimization means yelling at forklift drivers." Interested? What's the pay? Double what Vivian was giving you, plus equity, plus health insurance that actually covers your kid's asthma medication without charging you a $5,000 deductible. He was silent for 10 seconds. When do I start? Next was Rebecca Morris, the marketing coordinator Derek had hit on at a company party, promised a promotion to, then ghosted after she politely declined his invitation to grab drinks, just the 2 of us. She'd quit 3 months later when the hostile environment became unbearable, Derek joking in meetings that she wasn't a team player, giving her projects, then reassigning them to men at the last minute, excluding her from client dinners. She was working at a nonprofit making $42,000 a year with a master's degree in marketing analytics. I offered her $120,000 plus equity plus the promise that nobody would ever make her feel small for having boundaries. She cried on the phone. "I thought I'd never work in retail tech again," she said. "You're not working in retail tech. You're building the future of it. There's a difference." Then came the entire dev team I'd personally trained, 6 engineers who'd learned everything from me, who'd stayed at Harrington after I left because they needed the paycheck, who'd watched the code base collapse like a building with its foundation removed. I called them one by one, made the same pitch to each: double salary, real equity, a culture where your ideas matter more than your willingness to nod along with incompetence. All 6 jumped within a month. Harrington's already decimated tech team lost what little institutional knowledge they had left. Their LinkedIn corporate page started filling up with departures. Industry blogs noticed. TechCrunch ran a piece. Harrington Retail Group faces talent exodus as company struggles to modernize. Derek commented, "We're excited about our new talent acquisition strategy and fresh perspectives." Translation, "We're fucked and trying not to panic." By March, I had a team of 27 people. Every single one of them had a story about being underestimated, underpaid, or undermined by the Harringtons. Every single one of them worked like they had something to prove. Because they did. We weren't just building a company. We were building a middle finger to everyone who'd ever told us we weren't good enough. I treated them like human beings. Revolutionary concept in corporate America. Unlimited PTO that people actually used. Remote work before it was cool, health insurance that covered mental health and fertility treatments and gender-affirming care, profit sharing that meant something beyond empty promises in PowerPoints. When Rebecca's mom got diagnosed with cancer, I told her to take whatever time she needed. When Thomas's kid had a school play at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, I told him to go. When one of the engineers burned out after a brutal sprint, I sent them on a 2-week paid vacation to Bali and told them to turn off their laptop. People noticed. Word spread through industry networks. Apex Dynamics takes care of its people. Small victory number 3 came in November when we closed our Series C funding round. $800 million valuation. I sat in the lawyer's office in Austin, my first suit in 2 years, bought off the rack at Men's Warehouse because I still couldn't justify spending money on myself, and signed papers that made me a paper millionaire. Emma was in first grade by then, still living in the studio apartment because I was plowing every dollar back into the company, but I'd enrolled her in a better school, one where the teachers knew her name and the playground equipment wasn't held together with rust and prayer. That same day, Harrington Retail Group's market cap dropped to $110 million. They'd lost nearly 3/4 of their value in 18 months. Derek started appearing in Page 6 photos outside Manhattan bars at 2 a.m., tie undone, eyes glassy. One headline read, "Harrington heir drowning sorrows as family business sinks. Vivian sold her Bentley. Bought a Mercedes instead." Still luxury, but the downgrade was noticeable to anyone who understood society's subtle signals. Elena's Qatari prince dumped her around the same time. TMZ got photos of them arguing outside a restaurant in Dubai. His new girlfriend showed up in his Instagram feed 2 days later, younger, richer, connected to a family whose business wasn't actively imploding. Elena flew back to Dallas. No more charity galas, no more tabloid appearances, no more pretending her life was anything other than a slow-motion disaster. I bought my first house in December, nothing crazy. A modest 4-bedroom in a good school district in Austin. Actual bedrooms with doors, a backyard where Emma could play without me worrying about needles in the grass. A kitchen with a full-size stove and a refrigerator that didn't sound like it was dying. Emma got her own room for the first time in 2 years. I painted it myself, purple, her choice, with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. She cried happy tears. "This is the best present ever, Daddy. You deserve it, baby girl. You deserve everything." That night, after she fell asleep in her new bed, I sat on the floor of my own bedroom, still mostly empty because furniture wasn't a priority, and thought about the mansion I'd been kicked out of. The mansion where Emma had a nursery bigger than our entire apartment. The mansion where Vivian had told me I'd never belong. And I smiled. Because someday soon, I'd own a place that would make that mansion look like a starter home. But first, I had more work to do. Emma asked me one morning over cereal, Lucky Charms, which I could finally afford to buy without checking my bank account first, "Daddy, why doesn't Grandma ever call anymore?" She was 6, still young enough to believe families were supposed to love you unconditionally, old enough to notice when they didn't. I looked at my daughter. Her mother's eyes, but my determination, and decided to tell her the truth. Not all of it. She was too young for the whole story, but enough. Some people love you until you stop being useful, sweetheart, and then they show you who they really are. She thought about that while fishing for marshmallows. That's sad. It is, but it also teaches you something important. What? That the people who stay when things are hard, those are your real family. She nodded like she understood. Then asked if she could have more cereal. And I poured her another bowl, grateful that at least one good thing had come from my marriage to Elena. At least one perfect thing that was worth every second of the hell that followed. Harrington's stock closed the year down another 28%. Derek was forced to lay off 200 people right before Christmas. Vivian gave an interview to the Dallas Business Journal claiming they were strategically repositioning for the digital future. The comments section tore her apart, and somewhere in Austin, in a modest house with purple stars on the ceiling, I tucked my daughter into bed and went back to work building the empire that would bury them all. Year 3 was when I stopped playing defense and went on offense. This was the year I decided that watching them bleed wasn't enough. I wanted to control the bleeding. I wanted to choose where the cuts went and how deep they'd go, and exactly how much it would hurt. Small victory number 4 came in February. Harrington Retail Group had 2 primary suppliers for their inventory, manufacturers they'd worked with for 15 years, relationships built on handshakes and legacy, and the assumption that loyalty meant something in business. I bought both companies, cash deals, no financing, no negotiations, offered 40% above market value just to make sure the answer was yes, and yes immediately, and yes in a way that couldn't be undone. The first was TechSource International, a Vietnamese manufacturer that provided 60% of Harrington's electronics inventory. Laptops, tablets, smart home devices, headphones, everything that powered their holiday sales. The owner, Mr. Nguyen, was someone I'd worked with directly during my Harrington days. I'd visited his factory in Ho Chi Minh City, met his family, learned to say thank you and excellent work in Vietnamese. While Derek was emailing him orders like he was talking to a vending machine, I was asking about his daughter's college applications. Relationships matter. I called him on a Tuesday evening, his time. Mr. Nguyen, it's Marcus Carter. Do you have a few minutes? Marcus, how are you, my friend? I heard what happened with the Harrington family. Very unfortunate. It was, but I've moved on. Actually, I'm calling with a business proposition. I laid it out. Apex wanted to acquire TechSource. I'd keep him on as CEO, give him equity, raise wages for his workers, invest in facility upgrades he'd been asking Harrington for years to fund. And this was the important part. I needed him to stop fulfilling Harrington orders immediately after the acquisition closed. Immediately? He asked. Marcus, they have purchase orders in process, contracts. I know, I wrote most of those contracts, and I'm telling you there are force majeure clauses that will protect you legally. You'll cite supply chain disruption, manufacturing capacity constraints, whatever you need. Apex will indemnify you against any lawsuits. Silence. Then, the Harrington son, Derek. He speaks to my managers like dogs, never says please, never says thank you, emails at midnight demanding immediate responses. I remember. And the mother, Vivian. She tried to renegotiate our contract last year. Wanted to cut our margin by 15% because, how did she say it? We're doing you a favor by giving you our business. That sounds like her. Another pause. When can we sign papers? The second supplier was Lux Textiles, a manufacturer in Bangladesh that provided all of Harrington's clothing inventory. I offered their CEO, a woman named Annika, who Vivian had once called that woman from that country, in an email I'd been CC'd on. The same deal. Better wages for workers, safety upgrades for facilities, respect, plus the immediate cessation of Harrington orders. She said yes before I finished the pitch. Both deals closed within 30 days. I called them on a Monday in March. The legal team sent termination notices to Harrington on Tuesday. By Wednesday, Derek was calling both companies personally, screaming about breach of contract. By Thursday, their lawyers were calling my lawyers. By Friday, my lawyers had buried them in documentation proving everything was legal, binding, and completely irreversible. The impact was immediate and catastrophic. Harrington's lead times went from 30 days to 120 days, literally overnight. They scrambled to find new suppliers, contacted manufacturers in China, Mexico, Turkey, offered premium rates, expedited shipping, whatever it took. But here's the thing about manufacturing relationships. They take years to build, and they require trust. And every manufacturer in the industry had heard the stories about how Harrington treated their partners, how Vivian demanded impossible margins, how Derek sent abusive emails, how they viewed suppliers as disposable commodities rather than essential partners. Nobody wanted to work with them. Or if they did, they quoted prices so inflated it would destroy Harrington's already razor-thin margins. Customers started bailing in droves. You can't run a retail business when you can't get inventory. You can't fulfill orders when your supply chain is a smoldering crater. You can't survive when your reputation becomes the company that can't deliver. Their Q2 earnings call was a bloodbath. Revenue down 67% year over year. Operating losses of $43 million in a single quarter. Stock dropped another 31% in the week following the call. The board held an emergency meeting. Derek was forced out as CEO in May. I watched the press release from my office, a real office now in a building Apex leased in downtown Austin, with windows that looked out over the city instead of a wall covered in graffiti. The board of directors has decided to pursue new leadership to navigate the company through this challenging period. We thank Derek Harrington for his service and wish him well in his future endeavors. Corporate speak for, "You're fired," and we're trying to make it sound mutual. They brought in a turnaround specialist, some hotshot from New York with a track record of saving failing companies. Guy named Michael Torres who wore expensive suits and talked fast and probably believed he could fix anything. He lasted 9 months. I know because I made sure his tenure was absolute hell. Every initiative he tried to launch, I'd already done it better at Apex and his clients knew it. Every supplier he tried to court, I'd already locked them into exclusive contracts. Every technology upgrade he proposed to the board, I'd already pioneered it and made it look easy. He quit in February of year 4 with a resignation letter that allegedly said, according to someone who leaked it to Business Insider, this company is unsavable. The infrastructure is broken, the brand is toxic, and whoever is competing with them knows every weakness they have. That last part made me laugh so hard I actually cried. Because yeah, Michael, I did know every weakness. I'd built the whole damn company. I knew where every structural crack was because I'd patched most of them personally, and now I was pressing on every single one until the whole thing collapsed. Vivian had a minor stroke in March, not serious enough to kill her, unfortunately. Just serious enough to put her in the hospital for a week and slow her down for a couple months. Elena posted on Facebook asking for prayers. Her privacy settings were terrible. I could see everything even though we weren't friends. Photos of Vivian in a hospital bed looking small and gray and mortal. Elena's caption, "Please keep my mom in your thoughts. Our family is going through a very difficult time." The comments were mostly sympathetic, but one stuck out. Maybe if she hadn't been such a terrible person, karma wouldn't be hitting so hard. Elena deleted it within an hour, but I screenshot it first. Dramatic irony moment came in April. I was at Emma's parent-teacher conference. She was getting straight A's, making friends, thriving in ways I hadn't seen since before the divorce, when my phone buzzed with a Facebook friend request. Elena Harrington. I stared at that notification for a full minute in the elementary school hallway, surrounded by kids' artwork and motivational posters about kindness. Then I clicked to her message. "Marcus, I know we haven't spoken in a long time. I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but I'm reaching out for Emma's sake. She deserves to know both sides of her family. Can we talk? For Emma?" I read it 3 times. Each time, my anger crystallized a little more. For Emma's sake. For Emma, who she hadn't called once in 3 years. For Emma, who still asked sometimes if Mommy was coming back. For Emma, who'd learned not to ask after I explained that sometimes people leave and it's not your fault. And the line about both sides of her family, like they were family, like they'd earned that designation. Like they hadn't thrown her out with me when she was 4 years old and never looked back. I left her on red, didn't block her, didn't respond, just let that message sit there, unacknowledged, the way she'd let Emma sit unanswered for 3 years. And I thought, if she only knew. If she only knew that the reason her family was imploding wasn't bad luck or market forces or economic headwinds. If she only knew that every catastrophe was carefully orchestrated. If she only knew that the man she'd helped destroy was the ghost strangling her family's company 1/4 at a time. But she didn't know. None of them did. And that ignorance made everything so much sweeter. I picked Emma up from school that afternoon. She climbed into my car, a new Volvo, safe and reliable but not flashy, chattering about the butterflies her class was raising. "Mrs. Peterson says when they come out of their cocoons, they'll be completely different, like magic." "Like transformation," I said. "What's transformation?" "It's when something becomes what it was always meant to be." She thought about that. "Like how you're not sad anymore, Daddy." My throat tightened. "Yeah, baby, exactly like that." And I drove us home to our modest house in our safe neighborhood, thinking about butterflies and transformation, and how sometimes you have to build a cocoon and wait in darkness before you can emerge with wings sharp enough to cut. Harrington Retail Group filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on March 14th, year 4. I remember the exact date because it was Emma's 7th birthday. We were at her party, 12 kids from school running around our backyard, cake with purple frosting, a piñata shaped like a unicorn, when the news alert came through on my phone. Harrington Retail Group files for bankruptcy protection. Stock trading halted. I excused myself to the bathroom and locked the door, pulled up the full article, read every word twice. Then I looked at myself in the mirror and smiled. It was the smile of a man who'd waited 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days for this exact moment. The smile of a man who'd built his revenge so carefully, so methodically, that when it finally arrived, it felt like opening a birthday present you've been shaking for months. I washed my face, composed myself, went back outside to my daughter's party and sang happy birthday with the kind of joy that comes from knowing your enemies are drowning while you're drinking champagne. Emma blew out her candles. I made a wish for her, that she never knows what I did but always knows she's loved. Small victory number 5 wasn't a victory. It was an annihilation. The bankruptcy filing detailed everything. Total debt, $340 million. Assets, $127 million. Stock price, 63 cents per share, down from its peak of $47 3 years earlier. Employees to be laid off, ye own 200 people. Stores to be closed, 47 locations. The family's personal guarantees on certain loans meant they were personally liable for tens of millions. The bank called those loans in April. I know because I have a friend who works in commercial lending at Bank of Texas, and he'd been watching the Harrington account deteriorate for months. He called me over drinks one night. We'd met through business networking. He had no idea about my connection to them and told me the whole story. "These people are fucked," he said 2 beers in. "The family mansion is going into foreclosure. They've got 30 days to vacate or the sheriff comes." I bought the next round. "That's rough," I said, fighting to keep my face neutral. The son, Derek something, came in personally to beg for an extension. Actually begged. Said his family had banked with us for 3 generations. "What did you tell him?" "We told him we don't give extensions to people who can't pay. 3 generations of banking relationship doesn't mean shit when you're $250 million in the hole." I raised my glass. "To fiscal responsibility." He laughed and clinked his beer against mine. I went home and checked Zillow. The family mansion was listed as a foreclosure sale. The same house where I'd signed my wedding papers under that chandelier. The same house where Vivian had sneered at my suits. The same house where Derek had laughed as security escorted me out. Starting bid, $8.7 million. Current market value, $12 million. They'd lose millions on the forced sale. I set a Google alert for when it went to auction, because I was going to buy it. Not to live in. I had bigger plans by then. But to own the place they'd kicked me out of? To legally possess every room where they'd made me feel worthless? That was worth any price. The Harringtons moved to a 2-bedroom condo in a Dallas suburb in May. I found their new address through public records. Bankruptcy filings are wonderfully transparent about where people land when they fall. 1247 Mockingbird Lane, Unit 23B. I Google Street viewed it. Dated building. Small parking lot. Probably $400 a month. The kind of place where you can hear your neighbors' arguments through the walls and the pool is closed half the year for maintenance. From a $12 million mansion to a $1,400-month condo. That's not a downgrade. That's a free fall. Derek got arrested for DUI in June. Mugshot made the local news. Unshaven, eyes dead, wearing a t-shirt with a stain on it. He'd been pulled over doing 80 in a 45, blood alcohol level at 19, nearly twice the legal limit. The arresting officer's report noted he'd been belligerent and uncooperative, which in police speak means he was probably crying and screaming about knowing important people. He spent 3 days in county jail before posting a bond. His lawyer got him a plea deal. Suspended license, $10,000 fine, court-ordered AA meetings. The fine alone probably wiped out what little savings he had left. Vivian started selling jewelry on the RealReal. I know because I check that site sometimes for vintage pieces for Emma. She's into necklaces and bracelets, likes to play dress-up. And there they were, Vivian's pearls. The ones she wore to every family dinner. the ones that caught the light like tiny knives when she told me I'd never be one of them, listed for $8,500. Original price, $42,000 from Tiffany, according to the description. She was selling them for 20 cents on the dollar because she needed cash more than she needed heirlooms. I thought about buying them just to destroy them, but that felt petty. So I let someone else have them, let them hang around a stranger's neck, completely divorced from Vivian's legacy, just another piece of pretty junk with no history. Elena took a job hostessing at a steakhouse in Dallas. Texas Roadhouse on Highway 75. I found out through Emma's school directory, Elena had listed it as her employment when she updated her emergency contact info for shared custody. She'd never actually exercised. I drove by there once, didn't go in, just sat in the parking lot watching through the windows, saw her in the uniform, black pants, black shirt, that forced smile you wear when you're exhausted, but tips depend on cheerfulness. Saw her seat an elderly couple. Saw her bring menus to a family with loud kids. Saw her stand by the host stand checking her phone during a slow moment. And even from the parking lot, I could see how tired she looked. She'd gone from charity galas and champagne to minimum wage plus tips and standing on her feet for 8-hour shifts. Her Instagram hadn't been updated in 6 months. Her last post was a quote, "Sometimes you don't realize how strong you are until being strong is your only choice." 3 likes. No comments. I drove home. Meanwhile, Apex Dynamics closed our Series F funding round in September, $14 billion valuation. We'd gone from a company that didn't exist 4 years ago to one of the fastest-growing tech companies in North America. Revenue, $890 million annually. Employees, 1,847 people across 4 countries. Client base, 342 companies ranging from mid-sized retailers to Fortune 500 corporations. My personal net worth, on paper at least, crossed $2 billion. I bought a 240-acre ranch outside Austin in October. Hill country, live oaks, a creek that ran year-round, views that stretched for miles, cost $18 million for the land alone. And I built a house that made the Harrington Mansion look like a starter home. 12 bedrooms, 14 bathrooms, theater room, indoor basketball court because Emma was obsessed with the WNBA, infinity pool that seemed to spill into the Texas sky, wine cellar, library with floor-to-ceiling windows, guest house for when we had visitors, helipad, because why the hell not? Total cost, $32 million I paid cash. Emma got to design her own room, purple walls. That was non-negotiable, but also a reading nook with custom bookshelves and a window seat that overlooked the hill country. "Daddy, this is like a princess castle," she said the first time she saw it. "You deserve a castle, baby girl. But you're not a prince, you're better. You're like a wizard who made all this happen." I laughed. "Sure, sweetheart, I'm a wizard." And in a way, she wasn't wrong. I'd conjured an empire from nothing, made their company disappear, transformed myself from victim to victor. That's magic, isn't it? The beautiful part, the part that made all of it worth every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, every time I'd wanted to give up, was that nobody knew. My name stayed off everything. Apex Dynamics was run by a team of founders, according to our press releases. I was listed in corporate documents as minority stakeholder through shell companies. The tech blogs speculated about the mysterious architect behind Apex's success. Forbes ran a piece trying to uncover the founder's identity and came up empty. I'd built a $14 billion company and stayed completely anonymous, which meant the Harringtons had no idea who destroyed them. No idea that their former son-in-law, the one they'd called a freeloader and gold digger and trash, was the same person who now owned companies that supplied half the retail industry. No idea that every catastrophe that had befallen them traced back to a man sitting in a mansion they couldn't afford to visit, watching their lives crumble like he was watching a particularly satisfying movie. Dramatic irony at its finest. They thought they were victims of market forces, bad luck, economic headwinds. They had no idea they were victims of me, And that ignorance was the sweetest part of all. Harrington Retail Group was sold out of bankruptcy in January of year 5. The buyer was listed in court documents as HRG Holdings LLC, a Delaware corporation with ownership buried under 3 layers of shell companies. Purchase price: $47 million for all assets, including the brand name, remaining inventory, intellectual property, and customer data. The bankruptcy judge called it a fair market price given the company's distressed state. The Harringtons got nothing. Every dollar went to creditors and lawyers. Vivian, Derek, and Elena walked away with exactly what they'd given me. Nothing. They'd taken my company. I'd taken theirs. Seems fair. I kept the Harrington Retail Group name active, relaunched it as a subsidiary of Apex Dynamics. Same logo, same branding, same stores that hadn't closed. But now it was mine. Every transaction, every sale, every customer who shopped there thinking they were supporting the same family business that had existed for 3 generations. They were putting money in my pocket. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. February through October of year 5, I watched them from a distance. Vivian was searching obituaries for old money friends, probably hoping someone would die and leave her something. Parking tickets piling up because she couldn't afford the fines. Generic brand groceries instead of Whole Foods. Derek pawned his Rolex in March, the one his grandfather gave him, the one he used to check ostentatiously during meetings to signal how important and busy he was. Sold it for $8,000 at a pawn shop on Mockingbird. I know because I have Google alerts set up for their names, and pawn shops file certain paperwork that becomes public record. He got maybe 30% of what it was worth. Desperation makes terrible negotiators. Elena was working double shifts at Texas Roadhouse. I heard through Emma's school, the secretary there is friends with someone who ate at that location, that Elena's feet were bleeding from standing so long, that she kept Advil in her apron, that she'd asked for extra weekend shifts to make rent. Then, in November, something shifted. I started hearing rumors through Austin's tech community, people talking about that billionaire who stays private, about the mansion being built on the Hill Country Ranch, about the guy with a young daughter who kept to himself, didn't do charity galas, didn't seek publicity. Someone mentioned my first name in a conversation I overheard at a coffee shop. Marcus something. Nobody knows his last name. Super secretive. I left before they could notice me listening, but I knew the walls were thinning. Elena put it together first. I don't know how. Maybe Google stalking. Maybe she remembered Austin. Maybe someone at Emma's old school mentioned where we'd moved. Maybe desperation makes you better at detective work, she told Vivian and Derek. I imagined that conversation. I think I know who destroyed us. Who? Marcus. That loser. Impossible. He was living in a studio apartment last time we checked. That was 4 years ago, Mother. People change. Vivian would have dismissed it immediately. Too proud to believe the man she'd thrown out could have risen that high. Too invested in the story where they were victims of circumstance rather than consequences. But desperation makes people brave. And they were drowning. So they found my address, probably the same way I'd found theirs, through public records and property searches. 240 acres, 50 million property value. Registered to a trust with my name buried in the paperwork if you knew where to look. They made the drive from Dallas to Austin on November 29th. 3 hours in a beat-up Toyota Camry that probably struggled on the hills. I imagined them in that car, Derek driving because his license suspension had finally ended. Vivian in the passenger seat, pearls long gone, practicing what she'd say. Elena in the back, probably crying because she knew how badly this could go. They passed the gate with my name on it, understated, classy, nothing ostentatious. Drove up the long driveway lined with live oaks. Saw the mansion rising from the hill like a monument to everything they'd lost, and pulled up to my door like ghosts arriving to haunt the wrong house. Because they weren't ghosts. I was. I was the ghost who'd been haunting them for 5 years. Invisible and relentless, dismantling their lives with the precision of someone who knew every structural weakness. And now they were here, on my doorstep, about to beg the man they'd destroyed. The gate camera pinged at 6:47 p.m., and I smiled, because after 5 years of patience, of planning, of revenge so calculated, it was almost art. The reckoning had finally arrived. The gate camera pinged at exactly 6:47 p.m., pulling me out of a moment so perfect it felt like someone else's life. Emma and I were in the home theater, the one with reclining seats that cost more than most people's cars and a screen bigger than the wall of our old studio apartment. We were watching Encanto for what had to be the 300th time. Emma knew every word, every song, mouthed along with Mirabelle while eating popcorn from a bowl balanced on her knees. "We don't talk about Bruno, no, no, no." My phone buzzed. Security feed. A beat-up Toyota Camry sat at the gate, engine idling rough, exhaust visible in the cooling evening air. The kind of car held together by hope and minimum payments, with a cracked windshield and a bumper that looked one pothole away from falling off completely. 3 people inside. I recognized the slope of those shoulders before the driver's door even opened. Vivian. My heart went completely still, then started beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Baby, go find Maria," I said, keeping my voice light. "Tell her it's movie time in her room." Emma looked up, confused. "But we're watching." "I know, sweetheart. Something came up. You can finish it upstairs, okay?" She saw something in my face that made her not argue. Just grabbed her giraffe, still the same one from when she was 4, worn and loved, and patted out in her bare feet. I waited until I heard her upstairs before standing, walked through the house alone, my footsteps echoing on marble floors that probably cost more per square foot than their monthly rent. The Texas evening hit me when I opened the front door. Cool but not cold, that perfect November temperature where summer finally admits defeat. Cicadas screamed in the live oaks like they were cheering for what was about to happen. They were halfway up the driveway by the time I stepped onto the porch, and God, they looked small. Vivian had aged 20 years. The woman who'd worn pearls and power-like armor now wore a coat from Walmart. I recognized the brand because Emma and I used to shop there, and her hair had gone gray at the roots, dyed too dark to hide it. Her face was thinner, sharper, all the softness that wealth provides burned away by stress and time. Derek stumbled out behind her, unshaven, maybe 3 days of stubble catching the porch light, belly spilling over his belt in a way that spoke of beer and defeat, eyes red-rimmed from crying or drinking or both. The arrogance I remembered had curdled into something desperate and mean, and Elena. Jesus Christ, Elena. Someone had turned the brightness down on her entire existence. No makeup. I'd never seen her without makeup in the entire time I'd known her. Hair in a messy bun held together with what looked like a rubber band. The face that used to grace society pages now looked hunted, hollow, like she hadn't slept in months. She wore scrubs, the uniform from Texas Roadhouse. Still had her name tag pinned to her chest. "Elena, happy to serve you." They froze when they saw me. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, wearing Lululemon sweats that cost $200 and a t-shirt so soft it felt like wearing a cloud. Barefoot on marble that was heated from below because why not? The contrast was so stark it was almost funny. Almost. Vivian recovered first, the way people who've spent their whole lives in power always do. Forced a smile that didn't reach anywhere near her eyes. "Hello, stranger." Her voice cracked on the word. Derek couldn't look at me, just stared at the ground like a beaten dog. Elena whispered my name like a prayer or a curse. I couldn't tell which. I said nothing, just stood there, letting them feel the weight of silence, letting them see what 5 years of their absence had built. The mansion behind me rose like a monument to everything they'd tried to take from me. The driveway they'd just walked up was longer than the entire street where our old apartment had been. The door I was blocking was hand-carved mahogany, shipped from Indonesia, cost $85,000, had a security system that could identify faces from 50 feet away. and they were standing there in Walmart coats and used car desperation, looking up at me like I was a king and they were beggars, which I suppose they were. Vivian cleared her throat, tried to summon some version of the woman who'd once dismissed me with a wave. We heard you'd done well for yourself." Her eyes darted past me, trying to see inside, cataloging the wealth visible through the open door. "This place is lovely. Lovely. Like it was a nice apartment, a decent house. Something normal people might aspire to, not a 50 million estate that made their old mansion look like a practice round." I waited. Let them squirm. Let them feel every second of the silence they'd given me when I'd begged for fairness, for mercy, for just one person in their family to stand up and say this wasn't right. Derek finally spoke, voice hoarse. "We're in trouble." I raised an eyebrow. "Again?" The word landed like a slap. Elena flinched. Vivian's jaw tightened. Derek's face went red. But they didn't leave, because they couldn't. This was the last door in the world still available to knock on, and they knew it. Elena stepped forward, tears already starting, hands clasped like she was praying. "Please." The bank took everything. The house, the cars, everything we had left. We're being evicted next week. We have nowhere to go. Her voice broke. Emma's grandfather would have wanted... Don't. The word came out cold enough to frost the air between us. "Don't you dare say his name." She stopped mid-sentence, mouth still open. "You lost the right to invoke him the day you sat silent while your mother framed me for crimes I didn't commit, while your brother laughed about me living under a bridge, while you signed divorce papers calling me temporary." Elena's face crumpled. "I was scared. Mother said..." "I don't care what Mother said." I looked at Vivian. "And you don't get to play the scared daughter card when you chose their money over your child's father." Vivian tried the old imperious tone, the one that used to make board members shuffle their papers and avoid eye contact. It cracked halfway through. "Now see here. We're still family." "No." The word hung in the cooling air. "You stopped being family the day you put me on the street with a 4-year-old and $43. Family doesn't forge documents. Family doesn't steal what someone built with their own hands. Family doesn't laugh while security escorts you out of your own home." I let every word land separately, like stones dropping into still water. Derek's composure finally shattered completely. He made a sound halfway between a sob and a laugh, the sound of a man whose pride just broke its last supporting beam. "We were wrong." His voice came out strangled. "Okay? We fucked up. We were greedy and stupid and wrong." He was crying now, actual tears cutting tracks through days-old stubble. "We're sorry. We're so fucking sorry. Just help us. Loan us something. Anything. I have a daughter now. She's 3, and I can't..." He couldn't finish. Just stood there crying while his mother looked away in disgust and his sister stared at the ground. "Please," Vivian said, and the word sounded like it cost her something vital. "We're desperate. We'll sign anything, agree to anything, payment plans, interest, whatever terms you want. We just need..." "What do you need?" I asked softly. The question seemed to surprise her. "Enough to get back on our feet, a loan, maybe $100,000 to start. We can pay you back when..." "When what?" I interrupted. "When you rebuild? When you start another company? When Derek sobers up and Elena stops working double shifts for tips?" Each question was a needle finding its mark. "You have nothing," I continued. "No assets, no prospects. No skills beyond spending money you didn't earn and destroying people who threatened your unearned power. What exactly is your plan for paying me back?" Silence. The cicadas seemed louder in the absence of their answer. "That's what I thought," I said. I let the silence stretch until it hurt, until Derek started crying harder, until Vivian's forced composure began cracking at the edges, until Elena looked up at me with eyes so desperate it almost made me feel something other than satisfaction. Then I stepped aside, gestured toward the open door. "Come in." They didn't move at first, like they weren't sure they'd heard correctly. "Come in," I repeated. "You came all this way. Least I can do is let you see what you built." They shuffled past me into the foyer like supplicants entering a cathedral. Eyes wide, movements careful, afraid to touch anything. The entryway opened into a space with 30-foot ceilings, marble floors imported from Italy, each tile hand-selected, veined with gold that caught the light from the chandelier above. Not the one from their old house, but one that made that one look like it came from IKEA. Original art on the walls. Not prints, originals. A Rothko that cost $4.2 million, a sculpture by an artist whose name they wouldn't recognize because they'd never actually cared about art, just about being seen at gallery openings. Emma's laughter echoed from somewhere upstairs, bright and pure, and completely unaware of the reckoning happening below. Vivian's head snapped toward the sound. Her eyes went wide, hungry, desperate in a way that made my skin crawl. "Is that?" "Don't," I said quietly. She looked at me. "Don't even think about it." I walked past them to the bar, custom-built walnut backlit shelving displaying bottles that cost more than their car. Poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey from a bottle older than Emma, older than my marriage to Elena, older than my first day at Harrington Retail Group, McAllen 25, $2,800 a bottle. I didn't offer them any, just took a slow sip and watched them stand there in my foyer, taking in the evidence of exactly how far I'd risen while they fell. Derek was looking at the stairs, probably calculating the square footage. Elena was staring at a photo on the wall, Emma's second-grade school picture, all gap-toothed smile and wild hair. Vivian was doing mental math I could almost see, adding up the value of everything visible, trying to understand how the man she'd thrown away had built this. I set my glass down on the bar. The sound echoed. "You want to know who bought Harrington Retail Group out of bankruptcy?" 3 pairs of eyes locked onto me. This was it. The moment I'd been building toward for 5 years. The moment when they'd finally understand. I smiled. Not a nice smile. Not a forgiving smile. The smile of a man who'd waited 5 years to watch his enemies realize they'd been destroyed by the ghost they created. Me. The word hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Derek made a choking sound, literally grabbed his throat like he couldn't breathe. Vivian's hand flew to her neck where the pearls used to be, fingers grasping at nothing, her face going gray. Elena just stared, mouth opening and closing, no sound coming out. I took another sip of whiskey. Let them process. Let them rewrite the last 5 years in their heads. Let them understand. HRG Holdings, LLC, I said conversationally. That's the company that bought you out, registered in Delaware. 3 layers of shell corporations, untraceable if you don't know where to look. I swirled the whiskey in my glass. I knew where to look because I set it up that way. Derek's knees buckled. He actually dropped, caught himself on the back of a chair that probably cost more than he made in a year when he was still employed. "No," Vivian whispered. "That's impossible. You had nothing." "I had everything." My voice stayed calm, almost gentle. "Did you know Apex Dynamics was founded 6 weeks after you threw me out?" I walked toward them slowly, each step deliberate. 6 weeks. That's how long it took me to register the company, set up the infrastructure, and launch the beta that would eventually destroy you. Elena's face was white. "Apex? You're the founder of Apex?" "Founder. CEO, majority shareholder." I smiled. The mysterious billionaire all the tech blogs tried to identify. That was me, working nights after bartending at Rusty's, coding while Emma napped on a blanket beside me, building the future while you were celebrating stealing my past. "But how?" Derek's voice cracked. "How could you—" "Every algorithm that failed you," I interrupted. "I wrote the patch, then sold the better version to your competitors." Step. "Every supplier you lost, I took them, paid above market, treated them like humans. They chose me over you because I remembered their kids' names and you couldn't remember theirs. Step. Every client that left, I stole them. One by one, showed them what real innovation looked like. Step. Every quarter you bled money, that was me, orchestrating it, watching it, enjoying it. I was right in front of them now. The mansion you're about to lose to foreclosure? I gestured around us. Ironic, because I already own the mortgage. The bank that called your loans, they answer to me now. I bought them last year. Vivian made a sound like all the air had been punched out of her. Derek collapsed completely, sliding down the wall to sit on my marble floor, head in his hands. Elena was crying silently, tears running down her face without sound. I poured myself another whiskey. "You thought you were cutting me out," I said softly. "You had no idea you were cutting me loose." "Why?" Vivian's voice was barely audible. "Why would you do this to us?" I laughed. Actually laughed. "Why? You're asking me why?" I set the glass down hard enough that it cracked against the marble. "You framed me for embezzlement, stole my shares, kicked me out with a 4-year-old and less than $50. Derek told me not to come crawling back when I was living under a bridge." I looked at each of them in turn. "Well, I'm not under a bridge. You are. And I'm the one who put you there." "Please," Elena started. "Every night," I continued, my voice getting harder, "every single night for 5 years, I went to sleep thinking about this moment, about watching you realize that every catastrophe wasn't bad luck or market forces or economic headwinds, that it was me, always me, patient, methodical, relentless." I walked to the window that overlooked the hill country, the sunset painting the sky in colors they couldn't afford anymore. I wanted you to feel safe first, to celebrate your victory, to forget about the man you destroyed. I turned back to them. And then I wanted you to wake up one day and realize the ground beneath you had been eroding the entire time, that the ghost you created had become powerful enough to haunt you from the daylight. "We're sorry," Derek sobbed. "We're so sorry. Just tell us what you want. Anything." I looked at him. This broken man who'd once called me a freeloader while spinning a pen that cost more than I made in a month. "I don't want anything from you," I said, "because you have nothing left to take." Vivian was shaking. "Then why let us in? Why tell us this?" "Because," I said quietly, "I wanted you to know, to understand completely. Before I tell you to get out and never come back." The words fell like a judge's gavel. Final. Absolute. Without appeal. Derek dropped to his knees, actually dropped like a man begging for his life. "Please, I have a daughter. She's 3 years old. Her name is Sophie. I can't let her grow up with nothing like Emma did," I finished for him. He flinched. "Funny," I said softly. "I remember when you told me real men don't cry. Must have been one of those family dinners where you decided I wasn't good enough to sit at the adult table. I was an asshole. I was wrong. I'll do anything. Work for you, clean your floors. I don't care. Just please." "No." The word was final. Vivian was shaking, her carefully constructed facade crumbling like the company she'd stolen. "What do you want from us?" Her voice rose, hysteria creeping in. "Money? You want us to beg? We're begging. You want us to grovel? We're on our knees. What do you want?" "I want you to leave." I walked toward Elena. She looked up at me with those eyes I used to love, used to see across a pillow in the morning, used to imagine growing old looking into. Now they just looked empty. "Do you remember what you said in the divorce papers?" I asked quietly. She shook her head, tears streaming. "Your lawyer read it aloud in the conference room. You said he was always temporary, a means to an end, someone to fix the company until we didn't need him anymore." Her face crumpled. I did write it, but Mother told me to. "I don't care who told you to write it." I leaned down so we were eye level. "Because you did write it, you signed it. You let them throw me out while you sat silent." I was scared. Of what? Losing money? Losing status? Losing your inheritance? I straightened up. I was scared too, scared of raising a daughter alone, scared of sleeping in a place where sirens never stopped, scared of explaining to a 4-year-old why Mommy didn't want to see her anymore. Elena sobbed openly. "But you know what?" I continued. "Turns out fear is a great teacher. It taught me exactly who you were, who all of you were." I looked at Vivian, then Derek, then back to Elena. "And you were always temporary, too." I walked to the door, opened it. Cool November air rushed in, carrying the smell of live oaks and the future. "Get out! We're family!" Derek started. "No." The word came out like a blade. "You're not my family." I pointed upstairs where Emma's laughter had faded into the quiet of a house so big you could disappear in it. "That little girl laughing up there? She's my family. The 4,200 employees at Apex who have health insurance and paid parental leave and respect, they're my family. The suppliers in Vietnam and Bangladesh whose workers I pay fair wages, they're my family." I looked at each of them. You're the people who taught me that blood means nothing when it's poisoned. That DNA is just chemistry. That love has to be earned and re-earned and can be lost permanently. The silence stretched. "So thank you," I said, "for teaching me that lesson so thoroughly I'll never forget it." Vivian tried one last time to summon the dignity of a woman who'd once had power, straightened her spine, lifted her chin, fixed me with what used to be an intimidating stare. "You'll regret this," she said. "Someday you'll be old and alone and you'll regret destroying your family." I laughed, actually threw my head back and laughed so hard my eyes watered. "Regret?" I wiped my eyes. "The only thing I regret is wasting 10 years trying to earn love from people who weaponize it, who measure worth in dollars and pedigree instead of character and effort." I stepped toward her. "You want to know what I won't regret? Building something from nothing, proving that the man you called trash created more value in 5 years than your family did in 3 generations. Watching you stand in my house, the one I bought with money I earned, and finally understanding how badly you miscalculated." She had nothing to say to that. None of them did. "Now get out of my house," I said quietly. "Get in your broken car, drive back to your subsidized housing, and never ever contact me or my daughter again." They didn't move. I said, "Get out." Derek was the first to stand, pulling himself up using the wall. Vivian followed, each movement looking like it cost her something she couldn't afford to spend. Elena lingered. "Can I—" Her voice cracked. "Can I at least see Emma? Just for a minute?" I looked at her for a long moment, then called upstairs. "Emma, can you come here for a second, baby?" Footsteps pattered on the stairs, light, quick, the sound of a 9-year-old who'd never learned to walk when she could run. Emma appeared at the top of the staircase in her unicorn pajamas, the purple ones with stars that she'd picked out herself, hair wild from lying on Maria's bed watching movies. Stuffed giraffe tucked under one arm. She looked down at the 3 strangers in our foyer and froze. She hadn't seen them since she was 4 years old. 5 years ago in a mansion that no longer belonged to them, in a life that felt like it had happened to someone else entirely. Elena made a sound like her heart was breaking, which maybe it was, though I found it hard to care. "Emma," she whispered. "Oh my God, you're so big." Emma looked at me, confused and a little scared. "Daddy?" I smiled at her, the real smile I saved only for her, the one that meant everything was okay and always would be. "Say goodbye, sweetheart." Emma looked at the 3 people who'd once been her family, at the grandmother who'd never called on birthdays, at the uncle who'd laughed when her father was thrown out, at the mother who'd chosen money over her daughter, and Emma, my perfect, intuitive, brilliant girl, understood without needing explanation. She waved politely, the way I'd taught her to wave to strangers. Bye. Just that one word. Simple. Final. Devastating. Then she turned and walked away, back upstairs to Maria and movies, and a life where those 3 people didn't exist. Elena collapsed against the door frame, sobbing like someone had died, which, I suppose, someone had. The version of her daughter who might have forgiven her. The version of her daughter who might have wanted a mother who'd abandoned her for 5 years. That version of Emma was gone. And what remained was a 9-year-old girl who'd learned the same lesson I had. Family is who stays, not who shares your blood. I walked to the door they were all still standing near. Too broken to move. Closed it. The sound of the lock sliding into place echoed through the foyer like a gunshot. Click. I turned off the porch light, leaving them in darkness. And for the first time in 5 years, maybe the first time since the day they'd destroyed me, I slept without dreaming of their faces, because they were finally gone, erased, made into exactly what they'd tried to make me. Nothing. If you're watching this and someone in your life has kicked you while you were down, if they've stolen your work, your home, your dignity, your name, if they've made you feel worthless while building themselves up on your back, listen to me very carefully. They didn't break you. They freed you. Because the version of you that was willing to stay in that cage, that version is dead, and good riddance. That version accepted scraps, made excuses for people who didn't deserve them, believed that loyalty and hard work would eventually be rewarded by people who'd already decided you were disposable. But from those ashes rises someone they will never see coming. Someone who doesn't need their approval, someone who doesn't beg for recognition, someone who builds empires in silence while they're busy counting what they stole. I'm living proof. Today, Apex Dynamics is worth $47 billion. We employ 8,200 people across 12 countries. We're changing how the entire retail industry operates, and every quarter we grow stronger while our competitors wonder how we do it. And Harrington Retail Group? It still exists. As my subsidiary, I kept the name, relaunched it. Every time someone shops there, every transaction, every sale, it puts money directly into my pocket. The company they stole from me now funds the empire they'll never touch. Irony tastes better than any revenge I could have imagined. Every year, on the anniversary of the day they threw me out, I send them a Christmas card. Same message every time, handwritten in my best penmanship. Still temporary? They never write back. Here's what I need you to understand. Your revenge doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be violent or illegal or even visible to anyone but the people who wronged you. Sometimes the quietest success is the loudest scream. Sometimes the best revenge is building something so undeniable that they can't ignore it, can't explain it away, can't pretend it isn't happening. And here's the other truth that took me 5 years to fully understand. Family isn't blood. Family is the people who stay when you have nothing left to give, the people who show up when the entire world has written you off, the people who believe in you when you're sleeping above a laundromat and dreaming of something bigger. Emma is my family. My team at Apex is my family. The suppliers who took a chance on an unknown startup are my family. The people who share my DNA but threw me away, they're strangers who taught me exactly who not to become. So protect the people who stayed. Build for them. Give them the loyalty and love that others wasted. Create something so beautiful and powerful that it becomes a monument to everyone who believed in you. And let the rest burn. If this story hit you in the chest, if you've ever been counted out, written off, told you'd never amount to anything, drop your city in the comments right now. Tell me you're still here. Tell me you're building. Because I see you, and trust me, someday they will too. One day they'll look up from the gutter and see you in the stars, and they'll finally understand what they lost. Like this video. Subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications. This channel is for us, the ones who were kicked out, the ones who came back owning the whole damn block. See you in the next one.